Hey, welcome everyone. We are the Why Do You Vote Social Action Campaign, and we are a nonpartisan nonprofit campaign, which is fiscally sponsored by Money Out Voters In, and we are focusing on seven nonpartisan issues. 71% or more support all of the issues in our campaign, which is wonderful for people to understand and really own. And part of the idea of our campaign is to change the conversation of elections from candidates to the future we all want. Most Americans want this future. Um, and the idea of the campaign of these weekly calls is to connect, engage, and empower. So I'm going to share quickly in the chat a place where we can all connect and stay connected and list resources. So, but I also while I do that, I'd love for anybody who wants to join the conversation already share where you're from, why this is important to you. Leslie, what you just shared about media and this issue would be great. So maybe you could start, and then anybody else who wants to, since we're still small enough in this group, it's really great to connect.
That sounds great. My name is Leslie Sheridan, and I'm the founder of the future world's largest sustainable products and services marketplace, Planet Sense. And my concern about this, I did not start the marketplace with the idea of shopping or consumption or anything like that. It was out of sheer frustration with watching 68.5 million climate refugees in 2017, major media coverage being anemic for the whole year of 2019. The six major channels spent an average of 4 hours covering climate change for the entire year. And that's just criminal. And so I got tired of hearing people talk about climate change being the biggest threat to humanity and looking around and going, okay, that's the biggest threat. Where's the big solution that can bring billions of people together, billions of businesses? And that's how Planet Sense was conceived. So that's my particular interest in climate change. It's just giving people the right to a habitable future and the ability to live and make an income and not beg their way into other countries. And that's where I'm coming from on it.
Thank you, Leslie. Would anyone else like to share?
I'll jump in, and sorry for my wet hair. I just got out of the shower. I'm Sylvie, and I come from Brazil. And for since my 20s, I've been very deeply concerned about our environmental situation. The demise of nature and climate was already a conversation back in those days. Come from a background of being a documentary filmmaker, and nowadays I'm really on a mission to try to inspire people to deepen connection. And I do it through the form nowadays of mindfulness and eco-dharma. So really, I go around groups and help people to shed, whether it's tears or anger or despair, and come together to join forces with each other to help heal, for one thing, and to join forces with each other so that we can make a difference. And I'm very concerned about this election, deeply concerned, coming from Brazil. I know what a dictatorship is. And so, anyway, that's why I'm here. And thank you, Holly, for organizing this, and keeping the fire going.
Thank you, Sylvie. And right now I'm sharing in the chat the where you can stay connected, add your info, add any resources. This again to connect, empower, and engage. Does anybody else want to share why they're here before we get to our featured speakers?
Well, I think I'm on. I'm Carol Barbito, and until last week, I have been the president and managing director of Earth Protect, a social media site featuring video to educate people about actions leading to a sustainable future. I am now still working on that and always will, but I am doing this principally through my own consulting, which I've had for many years as a leader of the nonprofit sector in building its capacity. So I will be hopefully seeing nonprofits and helping them be stronger at their missions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carol. Anybody else want to?
I'm willing to share. My name's Kathy Schreiner. I am part of the Interfaith Solidarity Network, and seeing the invitation, I was just curious about this group. I care very strongly about the environment, about the issues that you're talking about. I'm just here as myself, but I am president of the Van Nuys Neighborhood Council. So, it tried, civically involved and also participate as a volunteer with several groups that help focus on families with young children 0 to 5.
Thank you, Kathy. Wonderful.
I'll briefly say where I'm from. I'm Sherry Stark, and I'm with several nonprofit groups, nonprofit elders groups, particularly Elders Climate Action and Third Act. I also am real excited to help promote the LA Climate Reality Project's calendar, because a lot of times there's events and we can cross-pollinate, go to big marches together, lots of groups. There's a temple, and there's an Extinction Rebellion, and there's 350, and lots of groups that come to Third Act events, so that there's more of a presence for media. And one thing I'm excited about all the various projects that we do, the most timely one is Third Act is doing local election work to try to flip the House. So there are 4 districts here locally that we're trying to get behind and help them so that we flip the House.
Okay.
Great to be here.
Thanks, Sherry. And put that calendar of yours in that link so that people can find it if they're in the LA area. Would anybody else like to join while they're here, what they're working on? If not, we can jump into our programming. That's wonderful, and we'll have time for Q&A and connecting afterwards as well. So first, I'd like to welcome Steffanie. Can you pronounce your last name? Because I don't want to butcher it. Is it Munguîa?
Yeah, you actually nailed it. Munguîa.
Okay, great. From Citizens Climate Lobby. And we'd love to hear overall what you're doing, and then also what you're doing with the Youth Ambassadors Program. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you all a little bit about what we're working on. So as Holly just mentioned, I work for an organization called Citizens Climate Lobby. It's great to see so many friends from other organizations we partner with on this call as well. And I think what has really resonated from all these introductions is that we're all deeply concerned about this election. We all see how important it is to get climate to be understood as being the major thing, at least one of the major issues that is on the ballot right now. And my role at Citizens Climate specifically is student engagement. So I'm going to focus primarily on what we're doing to engage young people in this election work, but I'm also happy to take any questions you might have about our broader election engagement strategy and the organizing that we're doing there. So very briefly, for those of you who may not be familiar with Citizens Climate, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to building the political will for a livable future. That takes a lot of different forms, but it fundamentally comes down to transformational advocacy and really empowering people to take action in the ways that feel authentic to them and in the ways that are going to make an impact and have these breakthroughs in what they believed was possible for them to achieve. So you'll see that reflected throughout the approach that we've taken to our student campaign this year, because it has actually been designed and primarily administered and managed by students, middle school, high school, and college students who are working actively to leverage that power of young voices. And as you might guess, they also came up with our name and our logo, if it felt youthful. I'm going to be talking a little bit about our Climate GOAT campaign. And if you're not familiar, GOAT is an acronym that stands for Greatest of All Time. So we are asking the students to be the greatest of all time by talking to their peers, to their family members about climate and voting. So our major aims in this campaign are to persuade existing voters to prioritize climate change as a voting issue if they're not already doing that, very much aligned with what Holly was talking about, taking the conversation away from candidates to the issues that really fundamentally shape our future. We're also working to mobilize voters who might already care about climate change but aren't currently planning on voting or maybe have an inconsistent voting history. You can think a lot about the work that Environmental Voter Project does, very much aligned with this, and we partner with them very closely in our broader election engagement work too. And lastly, because this is a social campaign, our students are working to recruit some of these potential voters or some of their peers who maybe can't vote yet, since as I mentioned, we're working with high school and middle school students as well, to go out and have these conversations themselves with their family members. And the broader theory of change is that many of us have young people in our lives that we care deeply about and whose opinion of us really matters to us. If you are a grandparent or a parent, I'm sure you have had the experience of having your kid come up to you and call you on something and realizing like, oh, actually, they're right. I'm making this way more complicated than it needs to be. Climate, of course, is the fundamental issue because I want my child to have a future. So we're leveraging that power and potential by turning out these young people and training them in how to have these deeply productive, nonpartisan conversations. And we're doing this by combining relational organizing, which is when you speak to people who you already have in your network, as opposed to cold calling strangers, and deep canvassing, which is a technique that fundamentally comes down to these 6 steps that you see on the screen and help us get to the root of the emotion of the issue. So rather than talking about the science of climate change, the politics, the deeply partisan nature of it in our current political atmosphere, we're talking about like, what does that actually mean for me? Like, if I am your daughter, what does that mean for the questions and doubts that I have about my own future? What does it mean about the experiences you've had? So we start these conversations with our family members, with our friends, and we ask them first to tell us on a scale of 1 to 10 how important of an issue climate change is to them when they're thinking about their voting practices. And this is so that we can get a sense of where they are currently and we can shape the conversation more. In the second step, we ask them to share their own stories of their experiences of climate change. Sometimes this goes very easily. People immediately know how climate change has impacted their lives. Sometimes it doesn't. And so we train our young volunteers in how to elicit those stories, how to tell their own story, very similar to some of the work that Why Do You Vote is doing to help people shape those narratives about why they're prioritizing climate as an election issue this year. In the third step, our young people make the case, why this is so important, how directly impactful this is going to be to their futures. In the fourth step, we help the people we're speaking with process the internal conflict they might be feeling. As an example, you might be speaking, a young person might be speaking to their parent, and they say climate change is a really important issue, and the parent says, yeah, climate change is an important issue, but I can't figure out how to put food on the table. So the conflict is about inflation. So we might talk about how climate change is actually going to make that harder. It might make it even more deeply felt on your pocketbook at the end of the month. It might make it harder to pay rent, to pay your mortgage. It increases insurance rates. So there's all of these different intersections, as many people alluded to in their introductions to. In the fifth step, we try to wrap up our conversation and we ask that same question that we asked at the beginning. On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you prioritize climate? And hopefully the goal is that we will have moved them a couple steps closer to 10, where it's a number 1 issue for them. And if they are a 10, even better, because when we get into our gratitude and the ask, we can ask them not only to contact their member of Congress and tell them that that's a priority, but we might also ask them to join our campaign as well if they're a young person themselves. So I want to share a little bit about some of the impact that we've had. Our student volunteers have had more than 500 interactions since April, including 272 conversations, full conversations that have helped to shift the needle for those people. They've added more than 2,000 new contacts. These are people who we now can send messages to, can now encourage to register to vote, keep on top of these opportunities. I should have mentioned earlier on, this is a nationwide campaign. And we have over 100 volunteers who are registered for this too. And these are all student volunteers. So I'm going to actually put these links in the chat because I'm mindful of time and want to hear from other folks who are here, but I'll put these in the chat as well as in the resource document so you can all learn more about what we are up to and get connected, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions in addition to the Q&A we'll have in a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Steffanie. That's great. And also, again, please You can put them in the chat and I can put them over into the document, but I have this ongoing document so that people can get the links after the call. You'll see the tab for today's date. But I love what you're doing with students. And then now we are going to hear from Ruthie Seroussi at the Public Interest Network, who is also working on climate and working with youth. Thank you.
Hi there. So thank you, Holly, for having me. So I'm Ruthie. I'm the Development Director for the Public Interest Network. And I have, so first of all, thank you for having me, Holly. And secondly, I love hearing what you're all doing because everyone's doing really incredible things and it's so important. We need people tackling this issue, climate, and all the crises that we face from many different angles and on a lot of different fronts. So appreciate you all. Okay, I'll try and be quick all the time because I feel like I could talk quite a bit. I'll be fast. All right. And I am a New Yorker, so I'm a quick talker. So if I'm talking too fast, I'm just slow me down. But all right. So I quick background about me. I grew up in upstate New York, went to college there, came out to LA to go to law school a long time ago. And the reason I'm telling you this is because my first job out of law school was working with the Public Interest Network as an assistant general counsel in their legal department. Did that for a couple of years. Ended up going on to another nonprofit to do civil rights and housing discrimination for a handful of years. But I had really significant law school loans, and there weren't all the great programs that are available today. Very big law school loans. So I ended up at a big law firm, and I did that for about 20 years. All of a sudden, I was a labor and employment attorney and a business litigator. At some point, I left and started a law firm with my husband, and I was about probably 6 years ago. Yeah, like I was helping my clients navigate the legal system, but I was really feeling a crisis of conscience. Like, what the heck am I doing with myself? The world is literally on fire all around us. People are facing, any number of different crises. And for me, I felt like I could be doing something with my skill set to make the world a better place. So yeah, I'd been volunteering in a lot of local nonprofits and organizations, my kids' schools, et cetera, but I felt like I wanted to do something more. So I was kind of racking my brain. I got a job announcement to come back to the Public Interest Network. And I ended up deciding to return there instead of doing something different, largely because of the way the network makes change. And for me, that's so important, particularly now when we have this deepening polarization, a widening partisan divide. We have this election coming up. For me, the Public Interest Network's model is sort of threefold. We really focus on sort of problems of abundance. And so those are problems that we call them problems of abundance, but just these problems that sort of the inarguables that everybody, no matter who you are, where you're from, what your politics are, can agree are problems that we need to solve. So, for example, getting lead out of drinking water for kids at schools, or just anyone. Nobody should be drinking water with lead in it. Or it might be kids riding clean electric school buses rather than dirty diesel buses because there's higher incidence of asthma and respiratory illnesses on electric school buses. And then that's also obviously a climate issue. It's clean air, right? It helps reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So we work on those types of problems, and then we find practical solutions to those problems that have a tangible, livable impact on everyday lives. And we're all about building broad public support for or against a particular issue and building the biggest, broadest coalition as possible. Because like Steffanie, we're building the political will to really drive key decision makers to take action. And so for me, that's really important. And sort of rather than rather than simply taking a stand on an issue, we're all about getting results. And right now, in these times of polarization, that's really important. And so, for instance, rather than just railing against fossil fuels, we talk about alternatives. We talk about clean, renewable energy, going big on solar, going big on offshore wind, and to build a broad coalition, bring in many people as possible and re-engage people in the democratic process. And so that's why I chose to come back to the network. And we've been doing this for 50 years. We've been around for a long time. I'll share the website to my organization in the chat in a minute. It's publicinterestnetwork.org. And we're 13 national groups. We have a network of state-based groups in 31 states. We have members in every state. We have media presence in every state. We work in every congressional district in the country. And again, we've been around for 50 years. We've grown and evolved over the years. We've added groups where we've seen a void or a niche. For example, I'll talk about a couple of those in a minute, but each group within the network has its own its own sort of mission and the own tools that it brings to make change. But each group shares a vision of a better world, a similar vision of a better world, and a strategic approach to making change. So we all use that same model I talked about. And I guess I forgot the third piece of that model, which really is that we use the network's platform, these 13 national groups, this network of 31 state-based groups, to leverage and make change. So, for example, on a particular issue, Green Century Fund. So, for example, right to repair is an issue that we work on. Our public interest research groups started working on this in 2017, and that's just the idea that people should be able to fix their stuff. It started out as consumer device, electronic products, cell phones, laptops, whatever it might be. It expanded to include farmers and farm equipment, to hospital techs when people were dying of COVID in the hospital and they didn't have enough ventilators. Manufacturers were refusing to provide parts and specs to hospital techs and hospitals to repair the ventilators, and to disability rights advocates, because people in wheelchairs, if their wheelchair gets broken, it's really difficult to get that wheelchair repaired if you aren't going to an authorized dealer, and the manufacturers were very reticent to provide the parts, specs, manuals to repair shops or to consumers. So this issue isn't just an issue about consumers fixing their things. It is, and it's an important one, but it's also a climate issue. It's, we produce so many products that just get thrown away because it's much easier to buy a new one than to fix it. So, and that impacts, everything from extraction to production to waste and how we dispose of the waste. And there's a stat that if people kept their cell phones for one more year, repaired them and kept them for one more year, it's the equivalent to taking close to 700,000 cars off the road, which obviously impacts greenhouse gas emissions. So we'll tackle different issues on many different fronts. And the public interest research group started working on this issue in 2017. They've had a lot of momentum and success in the last few years, but then the environmental groups got involved, and the Green Century Fund, it was one of the first families of fossil fuel-free investment funds in the country. And it has a really amazing shareholder advocacy program. So we'll file shareholder advocacy resolutions against corporations to say, hey, stop logging in old growth forests. You shouldn't be chopping down old growth and mature trees for toilet paper. We got to come up with a different plan, a more sustainable plan. It filed shareholder advocacy resolutions against Apple, Microsoft, Google about the right to repair issue. It files them on plastics, deforestation, number of different issues. On the right to repair issue, it was able to put enough pressure on Apple in conjunction with our state and national groups, our student groups on college campuses around the country, we were putting pressure not only from the legislative side, we had state and national legislation that we were working to push, but also with corporate campaigns. And so Green Century Fund filed shareholder resolutions, and Apple, on the last day that we could withdraw that shareholder advocacy resolution, came out publicly and said, okay, we're actually going to, after years of saying absolutely not, it's intellectual property, privacy, we're not giving up the parts and specs and manuals to consumers. They finally agreed to do that and announced publicly. They didn't give us credit for it. Doesn't matter. We achieved the objective. They actually came out and decided to do that a couple years ago. So when all the groups in the network come together, it really is a powerful force to be reckoned with. We really can move the needle on a particular issue. I know I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to talk a few more minutes about the types of issues that we work on in terms of climate. So we have, our environmental groups will tackle issues like renewable energy, right? Really pushing solar and wind, going big on offshore wind, going big on solar. We have a rooftop solar campaign because it's also we have a bunch of funders and donors who are very interested in a rooftop solar campaign because it's a conservation issue. If we can take up every inch of available rooftop space, we don't have to have as many massive, large-scale utility projects, right? That impact the land and the wildlife and other things in that respect. So we have a big solar on superstores, solar on warehouses, solar along parking, along highways and on parking lots, residential, commercial buildings, and we're really houses of worship. And then we did a lot to help. We worked with a lot of other groups, obviously, and all of the people, but we did a lot to help drive the Infrastructure Act and to then educate the public about taking advantage of those tax credits and incentives that help houses of worship go solar, or communities go solar, or governments provide additional incentives, or individuals go solar. So that's an example. We have a Let Forest Grow campaign, really all about logging, preventing logging of not only old growth, but of mature trees. There's a different definition for it. And we want to protect even mature trees and to protect our forests and leave our trees standing. And obviously, most of you on this call probably know that that's also a carbon sink issue. In addition to just beautiful trees that that are a finite resource, we definitely want to make sure that we aren't releasing a ton of carbon in the air and that we're using our natural carbon sinks properly and not just chopping them down for wood that's used and then disposed of. So we work on energy efficiency standards and building code standards. And the energy efficiency standards is not only something that our environmental groups work on, but our consumer groups work on as well, because it's if you can save money, right? So it's appealable on both sides. So we work a lot on that. We work on plastics issues, both the environmental and consumer groups. We do a ton around plastics. Our National Environmental Law Center just filed a big lawsuit against a company in Pennsylvania that was discharging little microplastic pellets that are also called nurdles into waterways. And it's a big problem, and it's not as regulated as it should be. And then animals eat it, we eat it, it gets into water and into it's terrible. And so they filed a big lawsuit there. We also have federal legislation, the Plastic Pellet Free Water Act, that we're promoting it at the federal level. We have our state groups are working on that to build broad public support in their states and with their representatives to then ideally elevate that issue to the federal level to help push and drive change and push that policy through. Anyway, I could go on and
Yeah,
on.
thank you, Ruthie. That's
Yeah,
amazing. Actually, I
yeah.
love that you were talking about rooftop solar and community places of worship, because that is gonna segue perfectly. We'll have more time to get into details in our Q&A after, but I'd love to present Reverend Daniel Tamm, who works with the Interfaith Solidarity Network, and maybe you guys could work together to get more rooftop solar in his network.
Yeah. For sure. I'll let him
yeah.
go. I just wanted to say I'll drop some links in the chat, and I didn't get a chance to talk about our student group. So if people are curious at the end, I can talk more about that. We do a big voting rights push too. We have a new voters project, so I can put some links to that too if people are curious about that. All right, Reverend Tamm, it's all yours.
Okay. All right. Wow, that's a lot of information we all just got. And it's great. Thank you very much. I just want to mention and to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the ancestral lands of the Tongva, Tataviam, and Chumash peoples. This is land that we are just borrowing it. No one owns this land. We're just here. All of these people, these ancestral people, are still here, and they still cultivate it. They still live here and work here, and we are grateful to be able to be on this land and respond accordingly. I appreciate your bringing up while I'm thinking of it, the rooftop solar. I chair in Interfaith Solidarity Network, which is about 40 faith communities consortium within the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles. About 4 years ago, we did an event that was focused on renewable energy. It was called Sacred People, Sacred Earth. And we got involved with a local council member here in Los Angeles and others who were interested in lifting up something called the LA 100 plan. And that is for the city of Los Angeles to reach 100% clean, renewable energy by 2035. Actually, it was 2030 that they felt they could do it in. Within a couple of months after that event, this was on the docket of the LA City Council, and the City Council committed to reaching 100% clean, renewable energy by 2035 is the year that they put on it. And for any of you who are in the city of Los Angeles, let's stay connected on this, because We've already heard rumblings from people in LADWP who are charged with implementing this transition, saying, well, it's going to be very expensive, and maybe we should push this out to 2045. And that's like just simply not acceptable. So what we do in the faith community is we try to bring together all the various diverse faith communities throughout Los Angeles and beyond into the county to speak as one voice for climate action. And specifically, we are focused on clean renewable energy for all of our various organizations as well. The reference to the rooftop solar, we have a really good relationship with Dave Rosenfeld, who's the head of Solar Rights Alliance, based down in San Diego. And we've been working very closely with him. About 4 years ago, Interfaith Solidarity Network, people from within our group began hearing about this thing called Los Angeles Faith and Ecology Network, which was trying to form a larger interfaith circle of people throughout Los Angeles to speak with one voice regarding climate. So we migrated our Eco Justice Committee to LA Faith and Ecology Network, and so we really work mainly through them now, and I chair that subcommittee, that steering committee, and we are aligned with California Interfaith Power and Light, with whom for a number of years now we've been collaborating on a great deal of climate legislation. We are, a constant presence up in Sacramento, meeting with legislators, testifying at committee hearings, and then here in our areas, everybody going to their own, having delegations to go to their own representatives, either assembly members or state senators, to lobby them for climate legislation. We were just we're still in process with that. We were just in a battle for SB 252, which was about the two largest pension plans in the state of California to divest from fossil fuels. The committee chair for the pensions committee sank that piece of legislation, and she and I are in a little bit of a tussle over that, as to why she did that. She's a progressive Democrat, and she was listening to other voices. And so this is to be continued, but this is the kind of stuff that we're engaged in. We feel like people in faith communities, time was in the United States, from the 17th century on, people who would show up at churches, mosques, or synagogues would expect to hear an election sermon. They would expect it. They would want to know, well, where does my church, where does my mosque, where does my synagogue, where does my Buddhist temple, where do they stand on the issues? Not necessarily about candidates, because we are nonpartisan. We do not go. We don't go there. We don't go to that, which is why I love what you're doing, Holly, in terms of a nonpartisan approach to this. And little by little, as time has gone by, we hear less about that unless you're in a Christian nationalist evangelical congregation oriented in that direction. You'll still hear about those things, but the others have become rather timid, and we're trying to change that. because we want, people when they do go to church, when they listen to a sermon, they want to know about the values that we're dealing with, about the virtues, the values, that we're dealing with in terms of our religious tradition. And so this needs to be talked about more and more. Um, I keep avoiding the Solar Rights Alliance conversation, so let me go back
Yeah,
to that,
okay. Or do we
and
want to
then
follow
and
up
then
with
then I'll wrap it up.
yeah, okay.
Anyway, we've been working very closely with Solar Rights Alliance and on the Bishop's Commission on Climate Change. I work with the solar panels subcommittee, and we're pushing that constantly. So we're working closely with them and lifting that up. And we feel like we are right now engaged in attempting to encourage imams, rabbis, priests, you name it, to really speak about the issues from their sense of, from compassion, from love, and speak to the heart. This was mentioned really early on in the beginning, that speaking from the heart, when it comes to the crisis of democracy as well as a climate emergency, we need to reach people's hearts. And that's exactly what we do in congregations among people of faith. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And actually, like speaking from the heart, if you notice at the center of our logo, we are a heart-centered campaign. And I'm going to take a minute to show a sample video. The idea of our campaign is to take this conversation about these nonpartisan issues to social media, tie it to voting, and engage young people. So I'm going to share a video that Ed Bagley Jr. did with his daughter, and we love the idea of intergenerational videos because we often vote with our parents for the first time.
I vote to keep our rivers clean and our water usable.
I vote to protect native trees like this.
I vote because solar power works. We vote because we care about the future of our planet.
Why do you vote? I vote for clean air.
So you saw that, and I wanted to just let everybody know we are inviting everybody to participate the weekend of September 14th in the Spark the Vote social media and film challenge. People can participate across the country. We encourage everybody to make videos about voting for our climate. And the idea is, if it's bringing the conversation back to us instead of the candidates. Right now, there's just, the mainstream media wants to keep you talking about the top of the ticket, but with our electoral college, a lot of people's top of the ticket vote doesn't matter, but down ballot really does. Like, we're having some of these wins at the local level because of who's, been voted in locally, and those people work their way up, and they need to hear that we really care about voting for our climate. So, it's just short videos like you just saw, and we already have two $5,000, oh no, actually now we have three $5,000 awards that have been committed. I got another award yesterday. So we have over $15,000 in award money for best videos. And if we can start, pushing the media to talk about voting for our climate, as Leslie shared, a measly 4 hours in a year, we're committed to talking about climate. That's crazy a few years ago. So if we can reach the young people directly where they are on social media and talk about voting for our climate and voting down ballot where this really matters, down ballot all the way up. So with that, I'd love to get to the Q&A. And Steffanie, I'd love to, I've done work with Results, which was started by Sam Daly Harris, who will be on one of our future calls. But I know that Citizens Climate Lobby was kind of born out of the idea of how Sam does his work and all the letter writing campaigns that come out of it, and the, creating media, creating press attention. So maybe you could share a little bit about that first, and then we'll open up to other questions. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So as I mentioned, kind of the foundation or the cornerstone of CCL's organizing is transformational advocacy and transformational organizing, which is what Sam Daly Harris brought to results and why it has been so effective. And he does a really great job of categorizing what are the features of an organization that actually does transformational advocacy. But one of my favorites is that you invest actively in your volunteers. So we do that a lot through our trainings. We offer literally hundreds of hours of educational trainings completely for free. You don't even have to sign up and join CCL to access them. So if you are interested in becoming more informed on the political process, on how you can leverage the media of all forms, we do a lot of letter writing, LTEs, of course, but also have increasingly more resources for social media engagement as well. How we can leverage our communities to really raise the profile of the issues that we care about, and how to have very productive conversations with policymakers that are deeply informed, but also connect back to the heart of the issue. And I think that's my personal favorite part of transformational advocacy is that we put in the effort in training our volunteers, and then we let them run the show and decide what matters for their communities. And they do just an exceptional job of it, which is certainly what we've seen in the GOAT campaign as well. So for anybody who is interested to learn more about how we apply that more broadly within Citizens Climate, I'd be happy to talk more about that as well. But I'm going to very briefly go off camera and move inside because it has actually just started raining on me and my computer is already on its last legs as it is. So let me not get it wet. I'll be right back.
Thank you, Steffanie. Okay, so let's open it up. Does anybody have any questions? You can share, just feel free to just speak up or share in the chat.
Well, I'm just thankful to learn of several new organizations, which I've just put out on my social media. So thank you for sharing.
Okay. Oh, and I also just shared in the chat the links to the Hayden and Ed Begley Jr. If you can share those before you make your own, please help them go even more viral. I think we're at almost 800,000 views, and it would be great to get over 1 million views to, you know, to share.
Just,
Oh,
just make
sorry. I was just going to ask where Ruthie is from. Are you from San Francisco? Because I
No,
see
I
your
just have,
back.
it's the only background that Zoom lets me do for some reason. So well, there's one other one, but this is like so I actually live in Los Angeles. I'm from New
Okay.
York, but I've lived in LA for a long time. I live in Venice. Yeah. Are you in San
Okay.
Francisco?
I'm in Los
Yeah.
Angeles as
Oh,
well.
okay. All right. Yeah. And I guess I just was gonna say with our student groups, like I love what Steffanie is doing because I 100% agree with her that if you train the young leaders and sort of invest in them and support them, not just during election cycles, but sort of year round activating them, then I do think the ability, like the numbers show, like we've been doing it for 40 years. And when we're on college campuses organizing young people year round and training young leaders, when we do our the voter registration drives and our get out the vote drives, our numbers are almost twice, they're significantly higher than what the national average is. When people are just going in and registering young people are getting out the vote. So I do think that approach is awesome. So I think it's like, I'm glad that they're doing it too. I think we need a lot of people working with young people and re-engaging them because I think a lot of young people are very disillusioned right now. So I think it's great.
Thank you. Let's see, and I see you put the pergs and all of those links in the chat. I've also shared them with in our document so people can find them later. Maybe we should organize an LA meetup in person too. Get some of this going. Does anybody else have any questions?
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, you do meetups anyway, right, Ruthie? When we first were connecting, Kern had gone to one of your in-person meetups.
Yeah, we have a couple of events every year that we do. And then we have other events that we have a number of, state and program experts and national program team experts. So the National Environmental Law Center and Environment California, which are two groups in the network, are suing the Port of LA for all the clean water violations in Los Angeles. Like, it's crumbling infrastructure. It's not meeting certain standards and regulations, that's allowing all sorts of pollutants to get into the bay. And so we're doing an event, and I think it's next week maybe, that if I can get the information, I could share it with you, Holly. So just, we do events like that, meetups like that, where we'll have a press release or a rally or some sort of an event to gather and meet. But then we have certain events several times.
I would like to mention that the LA chapter of the Climate Reality Project, Al Gore's group, has that calendar, and it's really been useful for events. So if you can go on there and fill out the form yourself, or if you want me to do it, I'll be happy to do it for you. They ask all the questions on the form, and they have a graphic, and it's been very useful to find other events from the groups that I already belong to.
Oh, that's great. That's the one, the
Right.
laclimatereality.org/calendar that you shared earlier, Sherry. Oh, wonderful. Okay. That's good to know about. We can all share climate actions there. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? I mean, I would love to, I know you were just starting to talk a little bit about the plastics, Ruthie, or some of your other stuff.
Oh,
I know,
I have something
go ahead, Nancy.
sort of bizarre, like, or off the wall, but I worked, or have been working with an organization to plant trees, to do reforestation, but we also have these tree kits that could be used. It's like 1 for 1. So it's a little packet that you could use as a VIP pass instead of plastics for your events. So you can plant a tree here and you could put your logo on it and stuff like that in a biodegradable sticker that goes on it. But it can be worn on a lanyard as a pass, but we'll plant a matching tree in a developing country for every tree that's grown locally, which might be it kind of ties everything together.
What is your organization, Nancy?
Well, I'm working with Why Do You Vote, but I also work in cause marketing, and I've worked with nonprofits in like the Ocean Foundation, urban farming, planting organic food gardens, both on rooftops and sides of buildings, vertical gardens, that also help feed people, like at the LA Regional Food Bank. There's an edible wall garden. So I've done, climate is my main concern, but I've worked with lots of different nonprofits regarding that or environmental issues.
That is great. That thing that you mentioned with the seeds, is that something that's a giveaway, or is that
I have,
that
well,
people
no, you have to purchase it because of planting the matching tree in the country, and they just, it costs money to put them together. But I can send you some information about it.
Yeah, that
I
would
just think it's a great alternative to plastics.
yes. Yeah, I asked because we're doing a crowdfunding campaign, and we have an opportunity for businesses who have something that they want to donate to be profiled in the campaign and be our little thank you gift that people can choose from.
Okay.
We have like
Yeah.
5 different companies that we're allowing to participate in the campaign. And when somebody invests, we just show them these 5 options for a little thank you gift. And it helps spread awareness for these other organizations who are doing good work. So they just donate those items, and we all help each other.
Sure. Yeah. And they can be sponsored as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not what I normally do. I just had a feeling like that might be useful to some of you.
That's great. One of my favorite climate
you have
activists
a link that you
is
could share in the
Wangari
chat?
Maathai.
Sure. Yeah. See
And
if I have here. I have a little sample of instructions.
I love it.
And
Yeah,
you
if you
can
could
put
put a
whatever
link in the
picture on the
chat,
front. Yeah.
that's awesome.
Sure.
We usually do little glass jars of organic, locally farmed honey, but this is a good option to it too. It's really cute, and it's a great idea.
And then I know Daniel has more to offer about elections and voting. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, thanks, Holly. I think because we're entering this election season and our focus is on the issue of climate rather than a candidate, we can talk to people about, well, listen to what the candidate has to say. What's their past record, their current promises about how society and government must care for the least among us, and especially about the climate. And how is that candidate focusing on the common good? And there are very few, if any, more issues that have to do with the common good than our common home, the earth. And so just in terms of being really clear about what the candidate is saying about these things and keeping the focus on their stand on the issues and just talking about that with people without talking about the candidate, but just saying this is what this person believes, here's what they say about it. And what's the nature of their advertising, who's endorsing them, who's supporting them, and what do those people support? That's a very important indication too of how they're going to behave when it comes to the climate.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, great to know your issues and then do the research behind where they're getting their funding. A great website is Ballotpedia, and you can find out where people are getting and different propositions, where the funding is coming from. Here in California, we have, after the Disclose Act, we can find the top 3 funders. Often you'll see big industry going against climate bills, and Ballotpedia is a great resource to find out where the money is coming from. And like we were talking about earlier, this campaign is very intersectional, and money in politics is often very influential on climate because there's a vested interest in some very big multinational companies where what is good for the people is not what's good for their bottom line. And we've seen the cost of elections has gone from $717 million in 2008, before Citizens United. Actually, I'm going to make this one an interactive one. What would you guess is the amount if it was 717 million in 2008 for, the election that Obama was elected, and then Citizens United happened? How much money do you think was spent on elections in 2020?
An obscene amount. That would be my answer.
I don't know. I would guess 50 billion, maybe.
From
I'd guess like 500
717
million.
million. Okay, it went to 14 billion. So it was less than a billion. It was 717 million, and it went to 14 billion in 2020. So it's just so much more. And then so it's gotten more expensive to run. And then who has this kind of money to spend on elections is, the big corporations. And in California, it was great to see there was that whole setback law that had passed, but then the oil and gas industry was trying to undermine it, even though legislators and activists had worked for years to pass it. Luckily, they rescinded. They were going to put a ballot initiative on our ballot this year, and they ended up at the last minute deciding not to. But they probably would have spent $200 million just in California to try to keep that practice. So money in politics very much influences our elections, and it's great to talk about things in an intersectional way around these issues. So
That was one of the issues, Holly, that we really, faith communities came together and collaborated on pushing back on that, and in terms of advocacy, and that was just thrilling that came out as a result. We weren't really expecting it because the oil and gas industry is so powerful and so resourceful. But they, one person, one vote. There's the difference of collective action. When people come together with belief and faith and commitment, and not be bystanders, but get involved.
Yes. And do we have any last questions? We're getting close to the top of the hour, and I want to respect people's times, but I so deeply appreciate your time and coming together for this important conversation. And I do hope you all join us the weekend of September 14th to make videos about voting for our climate. But if anybody has anything, please just speak
I
up.
have a question about that. Making videos in September or submitting videos now to show in September? What is exact?
Oh, yeah. So it will be a weekend. It's a 36-hour film festival where people can join. We would like people to get together in person and team up and make videos, but people can also join from the comfort of their own home. Like the video that I showed you that Hayden and Ed Bagley Jr. did. So we ask people to make them that weekend and share them because that's just before National Voter Registration Day. The 17th of September is National Voter Registration Day. So if we can get thousands of videos online that weekend talking about voting for our issues, I think we can really inspire young people to register to vote and then vote and keep talking about voting, passing better climate legislation as a result. But it's really about reaching young people on social media where they are with the message of voting for our climate, that your vote does matter. It has an impact. And you can go to our website, whydoyou.vote, and we'll have updates and people can sign up to participate and we'll have a how to participate kit. You can always make videos now and put them on, but for the competition with the award money, that's the weekend we're focusing on. Anyone else? Well, again, thank you, Ruthie and Steffanie and Reverend Tamm. And everybody who's joined this conversation. I really love these Tuesday chats. I always learn so much, and I just appreciate all of you taking this time with us.
It was delightful to be here. Thanks, Holly, and everyone.
Yeah, it's
Thank
inspiring in
you.
these times, especially right now, to have all these good people doing good things. So thank you.
Indeed, bravo and brava, everybody who's doing all this great work. And thank you, Holly, for getting us together.
I appreciate
Bye.
finding these new groups. I wish there was some kind of a guide to all the groups that exist. I keep making my own makeshift, jotting down names and websites or whatever. But if anybody knows of anybody who's putting together a guide of what local groups there are that need to connect with each other, I would appreciate contributing to it with my little list.
Oh, thanks, Jerry. Yeah, we'll keep our eye out.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody,
everybody.
for coming.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.